Hello and welcome to Bloke on the Range, and a bit more Browning Hi-Power nerdery today. After the last video where I described why the magazine disconnect / magazine safety was particularly atrocious in this otherwise quite nice pistol, and this one's gone now. Look mum, no mag. A commenter actually suggested that I should talk about the semi-automatic trigger mechanism in it, because it's simultaneously it's quite interesting and clever, but there's a massive design flaw in it. So yeah, I mean, from the outside you've got a trigger and you've got a hammer, and trigger drops the hammer, slide comes back, trigger disconnects, needs to be reset, is reset, goes click again. This does it in a slightly unusual manner, so let's get inside the old girl and have a look at her giblets. So if we take my pokey thing here, an extra credit for knowing what this is. So what we've got is the trigger up at this end, which pushes that arm up, and that arm is sprung in that direction, and the magazine safety plunger is gone, so there's nothing rubbing on the front of the magazine when the magazine's placed now. That's important. The fact that it goes up is important. We've got a trigger mechanism back here, and it's very, very simple sear mechanism. It's just a lever there that allows the hammer to fall, and if that's kept pressed down, nothing happens. I mean, this is literally at the back end. That's pretty much as simple as it can be. So the question is, how does the force get from here pushing up to here pushing down? Because conventionally what you'd have is some kind of linkage going around the magazine here, and this is a BDA9, so the successor to the Hi-Power, and this has a bent lever that goes forward. Some have a stirrup that goes either side, like a P210 or a 1911. Depending on the arrangement of the trigger, that stirrup or bar may slide that way, or in this case slide this way. But in the Hi-Power we are completely missing what transmits the force. And this is actually quite simple, because we don't have to muck around with complicated machining in this area. We don't have to have a big part. What we do is we have a rocker bar in here. So if we zoom in here, this rocker bar, this end of it is acted on by the pointy thing in the trigger mechanism. This end of it here has a little finger that presses down on that nub there, and this actually does several things. It is the part that transmits the force from one to the other, pushes up here, gets pushed down there, pushes down, loses the hammer, and it's also part of the disconnect mechanism. So if you remember last time, when the magazine safety is in the safe, in inverted commas, position, it just goes up that hole there, and that's actually a clearance. It's not really a hole. If the barrel's out, you can see that that's just an opening. So what happens is, when you press the trigger, that bit goes up like that. Okay, so like that, bink. It goes bang, because that bit has pushed down on the sear, loosening the hammer. Hammer strikes the firing pin, bang, recoil operated. So watch what happens to my pointy thing here. Let me try that again. So we push that down. It's not sprung. It just flips back and forth because the way it's sort of self-resetting because of the way that end rides on things. So we go bunk, and it gets leveled back out like that, and sits like that. And that is the other reason why it can do that. It's not just the magazine safety mechanism that this serves to. So this is pivoted forward. We end up in this position like that. And when we reset the trigger, it drops down, comes back into this position, and then next time you pull the trigger, it goes boink, back up. Cycle repeats. Doink. Release the trigger. Doink. And it's ready to go again. And that is what that's doing. So we pull the trigger, it goes up, it cycles, as it comes back forward, that gets pushed forward by the front end of the rocker bar there, and we do that. Tink. So I think we understand that. And this is very, very simple and very, very clever. But, and this is a big but, what we've done is we've incorporated the slide to frame fit into the let's be really patenty here, into the kinematic chain between the trigger and the hammer. So if the slide to frame fit is atrocious, the relationship between the trigger and the rocker bar and the sear will be equally atrocious, and if it's not consistent, then it will be inconsistent, and that's why Browning Hi-Powers, even when the even when the magazine safety has been taken out, can still be actually quite atrocious, and they are not match grade triggers. But it's not meant to be a match grade pistol. I mean, fundamentally, this frame to fit's fine. This is a 1974 commercial. This is quite a nice tight one. But you could certainly imagine a really poor, shagged out military one full of crap and misused, mishandled, what have you, by soldiers and officers and what have you. I mean, this is still a fairly chunky trigger pull. It's just fairly crisp now. But I can feel, when I do that, I can feel the relationship between the slide and the frame be modified. Now let's see if I can zoom right in and show it. Can you see that? See, as I squeeze the trigger, that's actually tipping the frame down slightly. Let's just see if we can get the light on it. This is not me snatching or anything. This is literally because part of the trigger is pushing up on part of the frame. And that is imperfect. So it is very simple. It is good from a manufacturing perspective, but from an ergonomics perspective, it is not so good. God, that even moved. So there you go. I hope your mechanical nerdgasm was as good as mine there. I certainly enjoyed it. So thanks very much for watching. If you like this kind of thing, please consider supporting us on Patreon, because it's patron support more than ad revenue that keeps the channel chugging along. And yeah, I like this pistol. I shoot it a lot, and I'm sure it's going to turn up in match footage in the future. So see you then. Bye.